An old franchise is potentially coming back, a massive update about some first-party studios and games, and it looks like that Gears of War movie that everybody wanted is finally happening. There's a lot here to talk about, so let's get into it. What is going on, everybody? This is Randall419, the man with the million, back again with another video. I hope all of you are having a wonderful day. If you guys can do me a huge favor, make sure you hit that like button. Please subscribe if you're new. We're almost at 90,000. And make sure you check out the Patreon in the description for the Xbox too. Thank you guys so much for checking out today's video. Now, I promised everybody when I started making content regularly again that I would at least aim for one video per week. And this is that. And I will be honest and say, you know what, there's not a lot of incredibly great or new information packed within this video. I kind of just taken everything that has happened in the last 4 or 5 days, and we're going to talk about all the stuff here. Yes, Gears of War is finally getting a movie and an adult animated show. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Matt Booty came out, and he gave us some interesting quotes regarding some of Xbox's premier first-party studios and like what's going on with Fable, Perfect Dark, In Exile's next game. And he even basically said, hey, Halo Infinite and 343, they stumbled at the finish line. So we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. And I wanted to start off with something that was a little bit fresher, something that was a little bit newer, and that is with the potential of a older franchise, a once incredibly popular franchise, potentially coming back with new life if the Activision Blizzard deal actually goes through and Xbox acquires Activision Blizzard. And this is none other than Starcraft. Now, before we get into what Phil Spencer had to say about Starcraft and the Activision Blizzard IPs, if there was one franchise that I could pick that Xbox was going to bring back and make relevant once again, because let's be honest, Starcraft, even though it was potentially the biggest RTS during its heyday, nobody really talks about it anymore, and there hasn't really been a new game in quite some time. But I could really see Xbox and Activision making it matter once again with not only a new RTS game, but even maybe perhaps a third-person shooter. But let's get into the quotes here from Phil Spencer. Xbox boss Phil Spencer says, quote, "What could happen with older Activision Blizzard franchises like Starcraft is pretty exciting. Asked what could be on the horizon should Microsoft's acquisition go ahead, Spencer added that he was excited about getting to sit down with the teams at Activision and Blizzard and King to talk about back catalog and opportunities that we might have. Phil says, the first thing I would say is I'm not allowed to make any decisions about what happens at Blizzard or Activision or King. So this is all just kind of talking and thinking about what the opportunity is. Not only StarCraft, but Warcraft, when you think about the heritage of RTS games that we're talking about here, specifically from Blizzard. Whilst he was very careful not to commit to anything or give too much away, Spencer said that while he didn't have any concrete plans today and can't really get in and work with the teams just yet, he acknowledged that StarCraft was a seminal moment in gaming. From an esports perspective, from an RTS on console perspective, and from just an RTS storytelling perspective in the genre. I'm excited about getting to sit down with the teams at Activision, Blizzard, and King to talk about back catalog and opportunities that we might have. So I will dodge the question other than to say it's not something I can actively work on right now, but the thought of being able to think about what could happen with those franchises is pretty exciting to me as someone who spent a lot of hours playing those games. Now, I've never been the biggest RTS fan. I appreciate them, but they're not my favorite genre of games to play. But of course, even I recognize just how important and huge StarCraft was. And when the announcement came on January 18th that Microsoft was acquiring Activision Blizzard King, my first thought was, oh man, I bet you dollars to donuts that they revive Starfield. And not only do we get a new RTS in that universe, but I think they even expand it and we get potentially StarCraft Ghost, the third-person shooter that, you know, was canceled or whatever happened to that game. Wouldn't you just love to see a third-person shooter, Starcraft Ghost, by the Coalition? I mean, that's something that I'm just thinking about is like, you know what? That'd be pretty damn awesome. But like Phil says here, can't really talk about all those plans yet. They don't really own the companies. He can't wait to sit down and talk with all the studios about future opportunities. But one of those opportunities that is probably going to come around, I'd bet money on it, is that the revival of StarCraft's going to happen. We've talked before about the growth on the PC side that Microsoft is very interested in. 159% growth year over year for Game Pass on PC. What is that number going to look like when you start adding games like Starfield from Bethesda, or the big PC franchises like World of Warcraft, and you bring back a huge franchise like StarCraft? Those numbers would skyrocket. Would you like to see StarCraft return, and how would you like to see it return? Let me know what you think in the comments below. So, to celebrate the 16th anniversary of Gears of War, Netflix made a surprise announcement the other day saying that Gears of War was released 16 years ago today, and to mark the occasion, Netflix has partnered with the Coalition to adapt the Gears of War video game saga into a live-action feature film followed by an adult animated series with the potential for more stories to follow. Now, man, people have been asking for a Gears of War film forever. They've been saying, you know what, Dave Bautista, you need to be Marcus. Man, this came out of nowhere. I know Netflix and their movies are kind of hit or miss. Some of them are actually good. Some of them are actually quite awful. So I'm kind of two minds of the movie. However, a lot of Netflix's adult animated series tend to be pretty good. We just saw one recently come out, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, and that was quite amazing. And not only did it do extremely well on Netflix, but it actually helped out Cyberpunk get more users, draw people back into the game. So this is something that I think maybe Gears needs. Maybe they time it for the movie and the show to release either maybe with Gears 6 or sometime after Gears 6. But it definitely seems that Microsoft is getting more into the idea of their cross-media properties. There's the Fallout TV show happening at Amazon, Grounded, an animated show happening on Netflix. Now you have Gears of War happening at Netflix as well. Not to mention the Halo show currently going on at Paramount. I wouldn't be surprised to see Microsoft get more involved and try to have a lot of their big media properties actually become movies and TV shows. Sony seems to be doing the same. So it seems to be the wave now. If you have a huge franchise, you have the game, whether it's a games as a service or single player, and then you have some form of TV or movie content. But let me know what you think about the potential for Gears of War, not only in movie form, but as an adult animated series. And who would you cast? Does Bautista need to be Marcus Phoenix? And if so, who should play Dom? Who should play Baird? And who should play Cole? All right, finally, we need to talk about the things that Matt Booty said in his interview with Skill Up and Jake Baldino on Skill Up's podcast last week. He talked about Fable and Perfect Dark and In Exile and Halo. And you know what? Matt Booty really doesn't come outside and give interviews very often, so he's quite the opposite of Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer loves talking to the media, at least that's what it seems like, and everybody quotes him. We love going over the things that Phil says, and Matt seems to be more of a recluse, or at least doesn't really do the whole social media aspect. But recently, he's been showing up with more interviews, talking about Xbox Game Studios' lineup this year and next year, and he had some things to share. One of the things was about In Exile and how they showed off their new game to all the studio heads, and everybody was blown away. So according to Matt Booty, In Exile recently created a vertical slice for the Xbox bosses, and quote, everyone was kinda blown away. Adding more context to this, Booty notes, what's particularly impressive is how good the game looked in relationship to how many people are working on it. Quote, we had all our studio heads together, and In Exile showed a vertical slice of their next game, and everyone was kinda blown away. If there was a measure of the coolness of what you create as a ratio to how many people are working on it, that studio has to win a prize. And I believe In Exile has about 120 employees, So they're working from becoming a AA studio to a AAA studio. They released a multi-platform Wasteland 3 in 2020 and have been working on Project Cobalt, which is supposed to be some sort of FPS steampunk RPG. It's always tough to say when we might see these sort of things, especially with how E3 went this past year with Microsoft only focusing on the next actual year. But the fact that there's a vertical slice they made to show off to all the studio heads at Xbox, I think there's probably a good chance we could see it next year for release in 2024. I know one of the titles that everybody is salivating to see, and I think Matt Booty knows this because he's talked about it before, about his desire to show off Fable, but Playground won't let him. Yes, Matt Booty talked about Playground and Fable once again, and this is what he had to say. He said that Playground had a particular passion for the IP, and I think they also demonstrated that they understand what the heart and soul of Fable is about and how they can bring it forward for today's sensibilities and just make a modern take on Fable. There's stuff that I wish I could share and show because some of the things that I've seen are so encouraging. You could be like, well, wait a minute, shouldn't you always be encouraged about what your studio is doing? Why is Matt saying, hey, some of the things I've seen are encouraging? And maybe that's more to do with the fact that Playground is known for making the best racing games out there, right? The Forza Horizon series is the staple of the racing genre. It is the pinnacle. Nobody can touch it. But it's one thing to make a racing game, an entirely different thing to make an third-person, open-world action RPG that has the heart and soul of the previous Fable games, that takes a different type of skill set and different type of game directors. And they seem to be taking their time, which they should. You got to get this completely right. I know you want to know more about Fable. I want to know more about Fable. If there's one game from Xbox that I am dying to see what the game actually looks like, the world that they've built, it would definitely have to be Playground's Fable. Now, one of the other projects from Xbox Game Studios that I am so incredibly excited for is Perfect Dark. And there's been a lot of talk recently, ever since Crystal Dynamics came on to co-develop Perfect Dark. And there's been even some more talk considering Jason Schreier said Eidos Montreal's working on Fable. So you have these two former Square studios working with Xbox, that maybe there was something going wrong with the initiative. Why is Crystal Dynamics working on Perfect Dark? Why isn't the initiative the main on that? But this is what Matt Booty had to say about co-dev, Crystal Dynamics, and Perfect Dark. He says, I think one of the most difficult things of the last few years has been filling a big game on the scale of Halo or Battlefield during the conditions that we had. Number two has got to be starting up a new studio, he said, explaining how the initiative has gone through an employee reboot as of late. Number two has got to be starting up a new studio. You don't have the shared history, you don't have the people that work together for 5 and 10 years. We were doing a lot of experimenting with remote and hybrid, how we could attract talent. Some of it worked and some of it didn't. It has been less leadership changes and more just about the work of building a studio. It's a brand new studio. They're an equal partner in development, he said, while talking about partnerships like this could be more commonplace in the future. It's not a case of Crystal Dynamics has taken over or that they're replacing the initiative. We had 100 and some people become available who have this great pedigree of working on Tomb Raider. They're available, they're excited about working on Perfect Dark. It's really a part of how you build a game team these days, as opposed to some sign that we're trying to compensate for something. So that's basically Matt Booty addressing the idea that something went wrong and they brought on Crystal Dynamics because they had to, because everything was going wrong at the initiative. He's trying to explain what's going on here. Yes, we understand all that. I think it's interesting to say that, hey, Crystal Dynamics was available, and I've always said, well, why was Crystal Dynamics available? And it's because Square Enix had nothing to do for them. They wanted to get rid of them because they were a money pit. They sold them off to Embracer, and now it seems like Embracer might actually just let them work on Xbox games. They're letting Eidos Montreal work on co-dev on Fable and potentially more. Maybe they just don't want to foot the bill. So that's what Matt Booty is saying about Perfect Dark. And he also talked a little bit about Halo, about how 343 stumbled at the finish line, how it didn't have enough post-launch content. And yeah, that's exactly the reason why some would say Halo Infinite has quote-unquote failed or hasn't lived up to the expectations or the player-based numbers that everybody expected it to have. Anyways, guys, that's the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about everything in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Check out the Patreon for the Xbox 2 in the description below. Hit that notification bell and share this out on social media. Thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video. Later, guys.